when beginning initiation, context is incredibly important. We come from a mechanical process that modernity has programmed us with and made us what we are in modernity. We move from that to a organic process and then into a divine process where the other side becomes noticeable and available. Or, in other words, a moral process, because the ground of reality actually is moral. And that's what you're dealing with. So, before even starting the key practice, you can just start the practice, but what happens at the start of the practice is engagement with or communion with icons, which are that help mediate and bring you and your low empirical self into his context, as he's the ground of being. So it's incredibly important to do this before the practice. So we'll go into next the concentration without effort, which is the initial practice. And for information on that, also a deeper information, you can read chapter 1 of Valentin Tomberg's book, Meditations on the Tarot, which is about initiation. It's not really about the tarot, really. Well, not about how anyone else understands what the tarot is. It's about mysticism. And so with the icons, it's important to get Greek Orthodox icons. You can buy them from any monastery. Most monasteries, anyway, are a good place to get them from. You should have a monastery in your country if you're in England or the United States. There are monasteries in Australia. There are monasteries. I'm sure there are monasteries in... just look for Orthodox monastery, and they will sell icons. And at least you're starting well with the hands of the monks have touched them, the people that are closer to God than you are. You could get them off Amazon, but there's always errors with them. They're basically just putting images on blocks of wood and such. That's what I did originally, but I've got icons from the monasteries instead. So they don't have to be big, but what you do, what you do with the icons, it is a kind of collaborative mediation. And so it's important you at least get icons of Jesus and Mary. Look for icons that you might notice some emotiveness in, of Orthodox icons. And so what you do, essentially, before you sit down to start your practice, which we'll go into in the next slide, is you attend. Let me just make sure my mic's working and everything, because I made a small change to it. Oh, what's that? Why isn't that working? Oh, no. Oh, no, it is. It is. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yep, good. Good. I was worried. Okay. Let's just make sure there. Okay, so the Orthodox icons, before you start your morning prayers, apprehend the being of each icon. Look at it. Say, "We love you, Lord," in your head. And so on for the different icons that you might have. And as you do each one, if you find that process is becoming sort of automated, because this develops these mediating symbols actually reach beyond themselves to the eternal. So they help mediate these beings that are very real, that you are so distant from in modernity. And so they're not a tool, though. They are a collaborative mediation. And this is the case for all the practices we're going to talk about today. Practice as a word is a technical word. We have a lot of words that come from Roman times and Greek times, and metaphysics tends to have an inbuilt technicalizing that gets worse and worse as it goes on, and that has contributed to the meaning crisis, or the destruction of modernity. So we must always remember that when practice is mentioned, it's way, and it is always in some way collaborative, and the things that you are doing, something is happening on the other side. If you try to just have the frame of bringing it about yourself, it's the will to power. And again, you'll be ignored. And the language that the Lord responds to is the language of the divine. The language of the divine is not mechanical or even organic, but personal. He's your loving Father. He's not a principle or a process that you're trying to bootstrap into or something. He's a being. And you'll find out because it just won't work otherwise. You'll specialize in one area and it'll just be you specializing. Like I mentioned yesterday, you'll specialize in a faculty that is of the old Adam, of the fall, like the yogis or whatnot. You're dealing with the Lord, and these are the people that you need to have a relationship with. And that's what this context or telos that you're entering, purpose, these icons help with. And so before any practice, like I said, this very simple thing you do is you apprehend the icon, the being of the icon, apprehend it. Say in your head, we love you, Lord, or we love you, Mary, or we love you, Michael. Kiss your fingers and touch the icon, or kiss the icon. Now, like I said, if it starts to become feeling like it's automative, or that's also okay, especially with prayers, because they do have a magic to them anyway. Because the Jesus prayer, where do you think that comes from? It comes from the divine. Tradition doesn't end with the book. The Orthodox, the Holy Spirit sent that to saints. And so those things will always work, but it is important to set the proper context. Well, you don't even so much set it, but bring yourself into the proper context before you even start. And so linked up with this, and that's what you do with the icons before you start, you'll eventually begin to notice an objective emotiveness that comes from them over 3 months or so. But that's more an advanced thing. You just do this for now before you start. And you should place a Jesus icon on the wall where you do your morning attendings, the concentration without effort. That's going to be the center point where you look, is the Jesus icon. If you don't have icons yet, you could just begin by drawing a circle on the wall, but you must get the Jesus icon and place it there eventually. And of course, you're going to pray before you start as well, but we'll get into that in the next slide. So these icons, wear a cross during the practice. I would also recommend attaching to that cross. You wear that during the day, and also have a St. Christopher one, because you are going on a voyage in many ways. Yes, and that's the point of this too, is to remember that everything we say during this stream is not a technique. It's always collaborative on the other side. Your feet are being washed, and you've got to get into that frame and that context. The more you think it's a technique, the more, again, that's the mechanicalizing that you'll be just ignored. Well, more, it's to do with your moral development, and this is part of teaching you the moral development, and so the Lord waits until you learn. It also sends you hints, because he doesn't want to interfere with your freedom, because you are at a distance from him. This is you beginning the road back as the prodigal son. And yes, that's another point too that I see there, is it's important to understand the ground of your being. Well, we'll get into that in the next slide, but here, because you are attending the icons, Mary and Jesus, you're reestablishing vertical heredity. So you're not just, what does heredity mean? Being similar to. Rather than being similar to just your what has been and biological, you actually come from the Lord, and you're nested in him. And so this is the beginning of that fatherly reestablishment of contact, and the mother too, Mary, beloved Mary. And so now we can go on to the next slide. This is the core practice that begins initiation. So off we go. Okay. Now, I'll probably bring up a video just to give people a sense of visually showing you where it is, but let's just talk for now about it. Let's talk for now about it. This practice also, as it becomes more, some people might be able to do this from the start, but you are also to be attending your breathing and praying in time with that breath. But you should begin this practice at least, or at least be praying at the same time that this practice is going on if you can't also attend your breath. But you begin this practice with a Lord's Prayer and a Hail Mary, or a Lord's Prayer and an Orthodox prayer related to the Mother. And while you're going, you could either do the Lord's Prayer or the Jesus Prayer. And so as you start it, the key, attending, your eyes are still, you're in a chair, the chair must have a headrest and must be a seated, active passive is what we're trying to achieve. So it's seated, not lying down, or you'll fall asleep, because it is a waking up and going to sleep at the same time in a way. What happens throughout this process is things that faculties that have become unconscious are becoming awake, but you're also, like I said, passive at the same time, as we'll find out. But the basic where you're putting your attention, your concentration, it's called concentration without effort, is that you're attending the center of vision and the all of vision at the same time. So they're the two things you're bringing your attention to, and it's a balance between those two things. That's how it's achieved. You could call it the point and all as well. And so I could show a video, but you get an idea of everything that you're looking at, that you can see as vision you attend, and the point. And I'll give some tips of some people it might be who don't have experience with concentration or meditation in any way, things you can do to work up to it. And so, yeah, that's what you're doing. But it's important to understand that this attending of the both and this balancing, a good metaphor for it is like a tightrope walker who's not straining but gently moving across the tightrope, and he's balancing, right? Another metaphor that's really important and useful is a symbol, is you're like a flock of birds coming together, really, while you're doing this attention, and you're not flapping your wings, but you're gliding on a thermal, and the thermal's drawing you up towards him. The sun is, right? So you're not grasping and trying to, it's a relaxed state. So you should be seated, and you should be, your body should be in a relaxed state as possible. Anything that comes from him usually comes from in that. It's not an excitable state. It's moving towards silence in prayer. And so a way also of that. Now, one thing you add to this attending of the center and the all of vision, or the icon that you're looking at and the all of vision, this balancing, is, and pay careful attention to the words I'm using, because it's not a action so much as you allow the passive to rise, and you allow a slight sleepiness to rise. And this helps, and this is this passive active I'm talking about. It's part of the balancing, right? And that's kind of like a third thing that you allow. You're like loosening a grip a little bit, and you're allowing like a sleepy being, a sleepiness to arise and enter. But you can see how that's not an action, because an action is a willing. It's a releasing while you're doing it, and that helps establish this serious play. State that you want. Hanging a little loose is another way of putting it, or because concentration in people's mind, people think concentration and they think grasp. So no, it's you it's you got to not play into that. It's hard as a Westerner because Westerners trying to achieve something. It's very will to power. The Westerner is the Western European. So now, later you must add, and you should be praying at the same time as this. You should be able to do that while you're doing the balancing, but you might not. Some people have had trouble with, or one person said, being also attending the belly at the same time as doing this. So what you do is you can learn how to do that on your walk, which we'll go into as the next practice. But those who can or are intermediate in this, at the same time as you're doing those three things, or you also add to your attention your automatic breathing. And with the automatic breathing, in and out, you're not controlling it. Your attention's also there, as it is with the vision of the point and the all and the balancing. It's like a juggling sort of, but like I said, it's like being on the thermal, the balancing of the bird coming up on the thermal. And so in the in and out breath, you are praying the Lord's Prayer in your head. So I'm just going to show what the Orthodox do with the Jesus Prayer with breath. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And you see how do that in your head, but you're not controlling how fast your breath is, just with its automatic movement. And you pray in time with that, with the Lord's Prayer or the Jesus Prayer. So that should give you an idea of how that's done while you're doing it and while your attention's there. And if you get distracted, that's fine. You just, during this process, thoughts will come up, temptations actually. And this is part of this practice or way is part of the vow of poverty, but it actually practices all of them in a small way. So it's so important. But these temptations will come up, thoughts will come up. They even still do for me. That's an important part of it. But throughout the practice, you'll notice as silence becomes more, and throughout the time that you're doing it. But we'll go into tips related to it in the next slide. But that silence, the temptations that come up, you just do a gentle, neutral no in the head. Not annoyed, never annoyed, just a no. And then bring your attention back to what we've been talking about and continue. Which we'll see is an important lesson in what's going on. And so perhaps you might want me to draw it. So let me just bring this up. And I'll bring up a video real quick. Whoop. Just open up here. And we should be able to get this working. And so we'll just play the video. Whoop. Let's play the video. Whoop. Play. And this is your vision. And this is something you can also helps as a tip, is to get used to attending the all. When you're walking, the movement helps you notice the all at the same time. So you might want to do that separately on your walk, attending the all, the vision. And so I'll just draw on this. So, it's the center of vision that you're attending, but also at the same time, the all, as you can see here. And because vision is basically a circle, but everything. And don't strain yourself. So that's basically it. I just wanted to show that for people that might. But on one more thing, I was going to speak about that in the next bit, but you've still got the green. You can probably see this green. It may help to, like I said, not attending the point, but as you're walking, just to get used to attending the all of vision, like I said, to be moving at the same time like this. But also it can help to get away from just this, because we're so used to this point concentration on the center. We only attend what we're looking directly at, but there are other things going on. And so it may help to also attend like bits of tree or as they move past while your vision's just just forward. And so, and when you're doing the practice, your vision's still. If it moves away from the thing you're doing, just bring it back. Because you're doing this when you're doing the practice in the morning, you're doing this looking at your icon, and if your eyes jet away or something, just bring it back. It's just a gentle attention. Nothing is lost in this practice. Nothing is failed. everything is some things are going on in the deep unconscious that you're unaware of. Your feet are being washed on the other side. The practice is never wasted. And so it's also helpful, I think, because these things take time to work out, to pray to the Lord to help you. Both, and I pray every day, actually, for people who are now doing it to figure it out, but also, to start it as well. So that's important that you pray for it. There is a degree to which you will work it out too, and it develops. This gets deeper and deeper and deeper and other things, but this is the important thing that we're talking about now. So pray for help with it if you don't understand, and things will come to you. And where do you think that comes from? That to help you, the Lord and your guardian angel. So yeah, I think that's most of the points for this. Oh, there's another thing that I do, which is a thing I do more recently, is at the end of a practice, because really you're experiencing grace every morning, because your breath, grace ends up controlling your breath or moving with your breath. So he does. So, but that's more in as it moves into an advanced element. But prostration, which means kneeling down on the ground, putting your head on the ground. The Orthodox do this a lot. But it's a good practice in humility. You will gain a lot. Humility just happens naturally from this when you encounter the beings of the hierarchies and the Lord and Mary. You can't help but be made humble by it. But yeah, so you must add these two things together when they those two things. But change over time, grace. Yep. Cool. That's another thing. How it changes over time is you'll start with your eyes open, but eventually you will notice, and this is part of grace, and I didn't notice at the time. I was trying to keep my eyes open, but not of your will. Your eyes will not with your volition. Your eyes of their own volition will begin to shut. Allow that. That's supposed to happen. So once the eyes do begin to shut, you still continue your attending of the point and all. And if you can't sort of find where that is, use the feeling of the bridge of your nose to see where it is while your eyes are closed. This won't happen straight away, but it's something that will develop. And as your eyes are closing, and again, you're not doing it, it's something that occurs, and you're still praying this whole time. Again, this is not a technique, it's a way, and it's the Lord on the other side of what's going on. You must remember that and always understand that frame, because you will be tempted. You'll be tempted to bring things about. We'll get to that in the next slide with the trouble the Westerner has with this. But yes, just to finish that idea is that as your eyes are closing, the vision might go a little crossed. Just continue the attending where you are. Don't worry about it. Just allow grace to do what it's doing and continue. And once the eyes are shut, you continue your attending of the middle and the all and the balancing that entails. And also, like I said, that slight allowance of the sleepiness, I suppose you could call it. You're not going to sleep. You're never going to sleep. It's just the allowance. It's sort of a loosening. Helps bring that about. It helps bring balancing about, and helps bring, again, as I talked about on the video on this previously, this is the transcendent self. It's the allowance, the lowering and lowering of you, the bowing of you is allowance of the passive. It's allowing the unconscious to enter, but also you're conscious at the same time. So you're waking up and going to sleep at the same time. Also, it's worth considering, which might be a part of the next slide, but yeah, I should finish the point of that closing of the eyes. You continue it then when your eyes are closed. That's where most of the practice then happens. And like I've said before, you could start with 5 minutes, but people have begun to see things occur, not see things occur, but have the phenomenology that I've been talking about, and an awakening of the relationship and the breath with doing 30 minutes in the morning. So that is recommended. But you could just start small. You just want to habituate it first. You can start small. If you can't do 30 minutes, do 5. So, yeah. It's a prayer rule too. Again, Orthodoxy talks about this. You don't break it unless lives are at stake. Once you establish this is the most important time of your day. And eventually, you'll start to experience it not as something you're trying to do and habituate, but as the thing you're most looking forward to, going closer to Him. Especially when you start experiencing Him and you walk with God, it's the most meaningful part of your day. It's a great blessing. And the rest of the day couldn't function without this. And you see this priest talk about that. They have their holy hour in the morning. It's your prayer. It's prayer, meditation, meditation, prayer. Christian meditation. So, yeah, and the experience just becomes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And what eventually awakens, which I was going to talk about later, the senses of mystic touch. I'm not going to go into the phenomenology today. We're going to do that in the next stream. We're just going to talk about the practices today. But we could mention at least what Valentin Tomberg talks about in the first chapter, which is the zone of silence. I'll talk about at the end how to sort of get a sense of where that is, but it's essentially behind the eyes, really, in terms of you feel it in the region behind where you sense where your eyes and your forehead are. That doesn't become available at the start, but it emerges. And I'll tell you a sort of practice to do at the end of the practice that helps locate where that is. And you'll begin to notice the phenomenology related to this. And so that essentially is the practice. But yeah, prostration is something I do at the end because you're experiencing grace daily once you develop it. So yeah. I think I've gone through everything related to the practical element of it. Yep. That's it. And so, some general tips related to this. Like I said, you can, if you're sort of having trouble understanding or attending the all, again, don't be over concerned by, you will think, am I doing this right? There is a degree to which you work this out with your guardian angel. You work this out with the Lord, and insights are sent to you. But it can help, or it helped me early on, to I was walking, to attend the all on its own rather than the center, just the all. And what helps with that, because you're attending all of it that way, and you sort of, like I said, you hang a little loose when you're doing it. It helped me saying, I am this openness being that this is. A bit of Heideggerian terminology there helped. Also, what might help in attending this all is that you could consider the place that you're attending is slightly back from, or inward from, what your vision is, what your vision sees as the all, or slightly behind the eyes, if that makes sense. Also, people might notice what is called visual snow. It's a very subtle, transparent, like TV static. Now, you notice it when you're looking at a sky, and not everyone has this, but you might notice it when you're looking at a sky or looking at a grey or white wall. When you're attending the all, you're kind of attending that as well. And so later on, as you develop, again, the Lord is the ground of your psyche and the ground of your being. That's so important to recognize. And so this attending of what actually Carl Jung calls active imagination is the unconscious, and it's moving towards Him who you are nested in. So when you're attending the center and the all, you're actually attending that being that is static, that visual snow. But not everyone has that. So, but a good percentage of people do. It's a sort of gateway to the spirit, really. But it's another word for what Jung calls active imagination. And so as you're developing, people that are doing, and I would do this, is that you don't have to just leave it to your own time in the morning. You can do this at any time during the day. You carry the secret fire eventually. And so you can do your prayers and your attendings while you're just waiting in line or whatnot. And, your eyes will close and you'll do this. And you get used to it and you become able to do it anywhere. But of course, throughout the day, you're praying anyway. But we'll see that with the next practice. But, okay. That's another point. Don't over-try. There's that Yoda saying, just do, don't try. So when you start the practice, you set an alarm. for 30 minutes and you just forget about it. You're not there to achieve anything. You're not there to bring anything about yourself. Remember, it's collaboration. So it's so important to set that frame when you're going in. You're hanging a little loose and you're just doing, you're not trying to bring anything about. Because the Westerner and the Central European and Eastern European is better at this than the Westerner is. The Westerner is obsessed with ends, the will to power and ends. And the power is related to the technique that he's become, the technical that he's made himself into. And so, it's probably a little bit, sorry, it's just the air conditioning. It's probably a little bit much right on my head there. But, yeah, so he's obsessed with ends. And so you're relearning this technical being that you are to not be obsessed with ends, to just do and be in the moment doing it for that 30 minutes. You're not trying to bring anything about. Also, there's this tendency with the Western European. I'm not talking about Western East. I'm talking about Europe itself and the difference between the Western European, the Central European, and the Eastern European. So there's this attitude of, let's just get on with it. I just want to get to the results. Let's get on with it. So you got to be resistant to that too, to let that go. And you have to be patient. Remember, you're not bringing this about. You've got to train the attitude that you're entering his context. It's a personal relationship, like I said before. But that things will come about when they come about, not with my control. And when I'm ready, they will. When I'm ready. Things happen with your moral development in mind. So these are all sort of tips to help develop the process, but really what they are is preparing you. This is part of preparation, but even your ways are part of a preparation of you and a because that's what you're entering. You're entering with initiation, the 3 stages of purification, illumination, union. And so you don't have a relationship yet, so you're purifying your arbitrary self so you can establish a relationship with the transcendent self, your guardian angel. So you have to purify yourself, and this is part of it. This is poverty, part of the poverty oath. And there are other things related to that, like forgiveness, which is one of the practices we'll talk about today. But yeah, so that's another tip. But we've got some other stuff here. Yes, that's another one, is that when you're looking, what are you? The I amness that you are is sort of what you're attending when you're concentrating on the center and the all. You're turning the light that is you around to its source that you don't know. And when you think about what Jesus' name is, before Abraham was, I am. I am that I am. The reason his name is that is because there's no metaphor or symbol for him in the world. That would always be a idol in the way. The only symbol that can be compared to him to help understand him is I am. This experience of I am that you have is the only thing comparable because you are made in his image. So that I am is the only name that really gets to close to what he is. And so that's what you got to understand, that's what you're doing when you're doing these attendings, is that you are the ground of your psyche is him, where it touches the spirit. And you're reestablishing contact with him by turning the light around to its source, which is a person, a divine person. And if you don't consider it that way, you won't awaken to these very real beings underneath him, his hierarchies, and himself. We're demechanicalizing because that is a will to power, lusty arbitrariness of a source separate from him that wants to be a separate son. The whole of modernity is an attempt to be a separate son and distance from God. And so you have to understand, and you will eventually you'll see that love is the ground of being. As you deepen and deepen and deepen your contact through this Christian meditation and prayer, you'll establish contact and reconnect the broken, dead parts of your being, which modernity has ripped to pieces, like the mercenaries ripped the clothes of Christ after he crucified. You're reconnecting these things. That's why you're attending the breath and doing these various things, as we'll find out. Linking mind to body and the vital body and the psychological body. You're linking all these things back together, that you are responsible also for. You have to take responsibility. You just have to, even if you're born into something, we're all responsible. Because we all have this sin, and that has to go. And so this process isn't just this morning practice, but you're sort of practicing everything really while you're doing it. But it also requires a Christian, a Christian life outside of it, in terms of forgiveness and a bunch of other practices we'll talk about today that get moving on that. But this is the key one that awakens you to things, that change, that it doesn't transform you, but the collaboration is transformative as miraculous or sacred magic, you could call it, or it becomes sacred magic. At the start, it's your effort, but grace meets effort eventually. And what is that? It's the direct collaboration of the Lord with you, as that becomes a fact of your experience. The mystery of the breath, mystery of the blood, and other mysteries as well. So what else do I have here? Yeah, I talked about preparation, turning the light around to its source. Morning practice. The morning practice develops further and further. This is just the beginning of what you'll experience, and we'll talk about the phenomenology of that next week. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly read this here to make sure I went through everything to do with that practice. And these notes are available in the Discord for members of the fellowship. scottmanion.com/membership. The second part of the stream will be members only. Fellowship only. It's not membership, it's a fellowship. But, okay. That's everything. I think I've talked about everything related to that. The Lord and his angels are washing. Yeah. The Lord and his angels, your feet are being washed while this is going on. And so, yeah, that's everything related to that practice. That's what you begin. That's the first thing. Icon on the wall. Still vision. I think I've explained that. So now let's move on to the second one. Now, okay. So this one, if you can't yet attend the belly, well, you should be doing this anyway. But if you can't yet also bring in the morning practice, bring your attention to the breathing as well. Here's the way to bridge them together. So when you're doing your walk, and you should be walking every day, while you're walking, pray the Jesus prayer, like I mentioned in the earlier practice, how to do it, or the Lord's Prayer. You do that while you're attending the belly. And if you can't yet feel deeper in the belly, you should be able to you at least feel the surface movement of the belly. Attend that, or whatever is available, deeper perhaps as well. The diaphragm, the belly, have your attention there. And in time with the automatic breathing of that, as you're walking, pray the Jesus prayer or the Lord's Prayer in your mind. And like I mentioned earlier, I'll do it again just to show you, as Orthodoxy does it, is that Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. But in time with, in your head though, because when it's in your head, you can do it all day. Because what we're trying to establish is a praying unceasingly at the ground, or re-establish contact with a prayer that is unceasing, like St. Paul wanted us to do. That's possible because when you do this all day, eventually it enters the unconscious. So when you're even asleep, that prayer is going on. And it's very important. Like I said, we're reconnecting the different parts that the mercenaries cut to pieces. So that's what you're doing. Again, you don't control its movement. It's just the automatic movement that's there. And whatever change may occur, that it's not your volition that's interfering. Your attention is just on it. And so even throughout the day, in whatever task you're doing, you can drop into that. If you're waiting for a bus, whatever, drop into having your attention on the breath and praying Jesus' prayer, the Lord's Prayer. There's no reason really just to let your mind run. If you just pay attention to your mind, these are just temptations most of the time. You don't work anything out. You actually just deepen your resentments. As you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to work this out, this problem that occurred. You're not working anything out. You're not working anything out unless you sit down and write down pros and cons or something like that. But just stewing, it's just temptations coming up and making it worse. So you're actually far better off to just drop into this and help deepen your practices during the day. And the life that becomes awakened for you is infinitely greater than what you now are in modernity. So do this during the day on your prayer walk and establish a prayer unceasing. But also do a prayer to Mary as well. You must also do that at least once during the day. You have to establish this relationship with the mother as well. And the Orthodoxy is very, very good at talking about how important the mother is. So is Catholicism, to be fair. That's another thing too, is that what I do, you take this very slowly. You just start with a very basic thing and then move up to it. The Lord has your development in mind. And some people will have trouble getting started on this thing. Look at my video that says, I don't have time to pray, ? Which is and that will go through to you what its demons actually try to stop you. Your demons try to stop you from getting started in this. And the thinking in that helps you stop making excuses and begin. And so what I do, and don't be too willful to get to this or anything, but really throughout the day, it's 3 times I'm doing this. Like I'll do a morning work session, 4 hours, and then I'll have the lunch break, which ends up being a prayer break. And these are the best times of my day in life, doing this stuff now. Incredible. But in the afternoon, whenever your walk is, it would be helpful to go to walk briefly to where a holy ground is, where a church is, and do a quick prayer there. And that's what I do at the end of the day. But what is really great about that is that as things develop, you'll find that the miraculous starts to occur far more. And so if you're praying outside and doing all your concentration outside and attending the belly and doing the Jesus prayer and you do your concentration without effort there as while you're praying, you'll find miracles of coincidence occur. And if you're outside, you can feel in solitude. But you begin to care much less about solitude as things go on, is that you don't care if, people see you doing what you're doing. But things coincide with the wind and coincide with prayers that you're making. And so, again, much more above chance. We're not, I know the cognitive biases. It's obvious. It's just, it becomes exceedingly, unquestionably obvious how this occurs, like unquestionably obvious, the things that occur. But miracles occur in relation to what you're experiencing and what you're doing in your prayers. And if you're inside, you can hear the birds chirping. But yeah, birds are important to notice birds. The Lord speaks through birds a lot. Again, coinciding with your inner experience as one sense, really. Because, as we'll talk about next week, the epistemic principle is quite very cautious, which means truth, criterion for truth, to confirm something, confirm communication, to know that it's not from the Lord. So we'll talk about that next week. But point is, being outside is helpful because the weather and birds are something that the Lord uses a lot, or his angels use a lot. When the ancients talked about the language of birds being the language of angels being the language of birds, they were talking about it for a reason. It's not just symbolic. So not all the time, but sometimes. So even walking around, just allow the birds now to enter your attention. Notice them when you're walking around. But yeah, that's not really a practice we're talking about, but it is something you should be aware of. Helps to visit holy ground once a day to do that prayer. If it's in solitude and outside, that's a bonus to do a prayer there. And again, if you drift away, that's okay. Just bring a gentle, neutral no to the distraction and a return to the attending of the belly and to prayer. And I think I've talked about everything that I've got listed there. Yep. Practice and grace grows as you progress. You end up practicing every morning. Grace grows as you progress. That's very true. You'll notice that. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but we're not going to go too much into the phenomenology today. We'll talk about that next week. The mystery of the old breath. That's everything. We've talked about everything. Okay. Forgiveness. Of course, this is an incredibly important part of all this. And these things all come together. It's an important part of the 3 O's that you're taking. Of letting go of sin. I've got a video about all these other videos about these practices, but we're doing them all together today. But why forgiveness? Let's talk about why forgiveness first. Because people, pagan types, might think that forgiveness is cucky or something. And I've talked about this before. There's nothing more uncucky than this, right? Because you're uncucking yourself by forgiving. Have you ever heard the term, he is living rent-free in that person's head? That is why forgiveness. Because your sin and your resentment towards that person has created basically a demon, you could call it. That resentment in your unconscious, in your vital body and your psychological body, as it's called in esotericism, although they're more closer to modern terminology now, so people don't get as weirded out by it. But of course, what is vital body? It is nothing more than the memory, although it's, you know what vitality is. It's something that it's not always a physical thing. It's the energies that are granted to you, and that it's connected with memory. And so is the psychological body. Of course, memory is the body of things that happen. What has been gives form to what is and what will be. Because there is a thing in the way of your true future and providence, which this gives you access, which forgiveness gives you access to, because providence is him. He is the future of what you can become and has the best thing in mind for you. But what has been and what has happened to you is in the way. That's what destiny is. Destiny is the past deterministically forcing what is going to happen in your future. It's a destination based on what has been. And so the people that are living rent-free in your head are determining what you are going to become. It's mimetic. It's the mimetic spiral of the fake eternal return of the same. That history forces the endless loop, which people like Spengler recognize, but they also, that's what was in paganism and the Old Testament. That Jesus came, the future came, to grant us access to him. He is the future. So the projections that you have of the future are a fake future based on what has been and your past and your biology and heredity. Without Jesus and without outside of temporality that he is, you're just a deterministic subject. There's no, Sam Harris is right about you. Without him, only in the miracle that is him do you have a true future. And so that's what forgiveness is about. He will only forgive you if you forgive them. It's how it works. Now, destiny, there's another word for destiny, karma. Don't get freaked out, but I have to keep saying this, and I will always keep saying this. The Western word is destiny for this, but people just understand karma, the word, because it means what goes around comes around. Karma is like a mist that surrounds you. It's your sin. And so you have to do away with that. But only can happen with your collaboration with him. He's always washing your feet. And his angels are always washing your feet. And so now we understand that and why it's the least cucky thing of all, because if you're in a competitive loop with someone, you're cucked by them because you don't have a future. You're stuck in this mimetic combat with them. And that's what Twitter is, polemical combat. You've got no vision. Or you say, here's my new vision, and really it's just a mimetic product. It's not from outside temporality. It's not from him. It's not from your transcendent self. It's from your low empirical self and the mimetic desires that you've just inherited. You're a prodding. You're a cattle being prodded by temporal desire. We're escaping that. We're escaping modernity by recontact with the true Father and true heredity through forgiveness. And so what's the practice you do during the day? I think I've explained that well enough. I've explained it in previous streams, but that's why. So you can have your own providential future and clear the fake projection future that you have in your goals. Because future is a place that you can actually access, that these practices bring you into contact with. As a phenomenology, that's what revelation is. It's the future as a place that you can speak to that is him. That's strange for people, but that's what temporality is. It's a person at its ground. It's a, yeah. And as you continue in these practices, you'll notice that more and more. And so the practice, the first one is resentments will come up during the day. It happens. There's a reason why these things are being sent to you. You'll experience the will to conquer these people that have wronged you in the past, or whatever the resentment is. What do you do? Oh, I forgive that person. No, you don't say I forgive that person. That does nothing. You forgive to them. How do you do that? You don't go speak to them. You don't need to do any of that. You could, but you don't need to do any of that. No. You ask the Lord to bless them. More specifically, you ask the Lord to help them move towards him. Because things that may have been done to you that are completely horrible. Now, and you can still do this, the R word might have happened to some people, whatever it is. You can still do this because what they're going to go through, if they actually go towards Christ, is a harrowing and a recognition of the horror that whatever they have done, and a burning off of the demon that pushed them into it, that tempted them into it, or the demon part of them that they made themselves into from sin. So you can do that. Ask the Lord to help them burn off their demons, to help them move, to bless them. And that blessing is merely that. And you can do that for anyone. That's how you do that. And what happens is those things don't come up anymore. The Lord heals them from you. And you leave the mimetic spiral of that. And there's no psychologist or whatever can help you with this. You have to do it. Or he can't forgive your sins if you don't forgive others. All of them. And that's what you go through. And that's what you go through in Orthodoxy when confessing with the priest. He's just there to witness it. But you can do it on your own too. In this, because it's really important to do it immediately when it comes up, because it comes up for a reason. And your sins do as well, which we'll get into with the B practice of this. But they come up during the day. And when they come up, they're also a temptation. They're a temptation to judge, like you'll say, oh, F that person in your head. These things will come to you. These are all temptations. So they're also an opportunity in the practice to gently say, to neutrally say no, and then ask the Lord to bless that person by helping them come towards him, accepting him for everyone. You might even want to do that, again, for some people in the right-wing space, the J's are living rent-free in those people's head. You have to, if you want to really defeat a bad political force, you have to actually release yourself from the mimetic combat, then do it. Because the low empirical self is full of lusty desires and egoism. That has to go first, and your relationship with Christ must develop. Then you might be given sanction to do something political, but not on your own behalf, because you have warped desires to conquer people that are low, luciferic, or satanic. Because in modernity, we're made up. The ego itself is Luciferian and comes about because of Adam's sin by giving into Luciferic temptation. So this is a healing of all the things that happened since the fall, like we talked about last stream. But these are the basic practices that are related to it. So you can do it. Anyone can do it. Ask the Lord to bless them. And slowly, little by little, you're released from it. The Lord heals it from you. Every now and then it might come up, but he obliterates its value. He obliterates its memory. Its moral force is obliterated. The Lord washes it from you. And so when people go get, like some people, OnlyFans people go get some baptism, That's just the start. You haven't washed away your sins. It's the start of it, and it's a very important miracle that occurs in baptism. No. You have to go through this. You have to go through this yourself. Only then will all your OnlyFans selling of yourself actually be healed. It's going to take a long time to heal that sin, and you're going to have to do the work to do it. But for most normal people who don't do that sort of thing, it won't, it probably won't take that long anyway. You just have to acknowledge it all. But you also have to know what the sin is, and that comes to the second practice. This is embarrassments will come up. And this person, I know there's that OnlyFans girl who got baptized. As she enters Christian life, it will become up as an embarrassment. But everyone has embarrassments. Just little things, even just little things. Oh, why does that embarrass me? And they always come up again because you haven't dealt with it. And you can't deal with it alone. None of these things can happen alone. No psychologist, you see all the Hollywood nut bars. You see all the Hollywood nut bars like Jeremy Piven. There's a video of Jeremy Piven. I don't want to be rude. Bless you, Jeremy. But and turn to Christ, I hope. We pray and hope that you do. But, they go to some demonologist to do something, and he's crying in the arms of someone on camera. Whatever. It's like some clever demonology to fix the issue, but it doesn't ever fix the issue. It just messes things up more, and you figure that out. Or it depersonalizes and obliterates the person, and Christ didn't come to do that. That's he came to give us life abundantly, because the divine is personal. It's not a mechanism or being. It is a being. It's the being. So, okay. So what you do, these things come up. You can't just say, forgive me for the sin. Well, you've got to work out what the sin is. So it'll come up, but there will be a sin related to it. Just think, and to know the sins, of course, the church fathers, the 10 Commandments, Revelation, this is riveting the will to Revelation, riveting the will to the 10 Commandments, to the cross, to Christ, who is the good, who is the life, who is all the chief value. But you have to work out what those things are. So you have to do some reading to work out what those sins are, to know them. And you'll recognize as a modern that lots of stuff you've been doing, casual sex, all this sort of thing is, of course, sin. And you go, oh, because when you hear sin, you go, oh, like, what does that mean? Like dogma? No. What sin is, it's something that's permanent that damages you in your psyche. You could think of it like that. So what you're doing, like self-gratification, that kind of sexual organ self-gratification, you're damaging yourself when you do it in a tiny little way, and one thing leads to another. And so that's what it is. It's not about it being a dogma. It's about it hangs around in your destiny. It hangs around in your karma, which is this destiny, like I said. It hangs around like a mist that you can't see in your unconscious, in your vital body and your psychological body. That's why. And the tradition knows what all those things are because they were revealed in Revelation or through the Holy Spirit to the church fathers. So read the church fathers about that sort of thing. That's how to know what it is. But the practice, you will know the basic ones already through understanding the will to power, covetousness, envy, all the different deadly sins. And as you progress, you'll figure out what those things are. Casual sex, all these different things, sodomy, and those things are all connected up with sodomy. And so those things all need to be forgiven, to be released from this destiny mist that's around you. And so they'll come up and you work out what the sin is. You go, what's the sin that was related to that? And you'll figure it out. And you go, like some embarrassment you've had or whatever it might be related to because you're having premarital sex, right? It's sodomy. Casual sex is sodomy. And yes, I've done a lot of that when I was younger, but none of it all is sin. It's all sodomy. It's done for the wrong reasons. It should be you should be getting married. Again, we're not going to get into that detail, but these are all sins. You have to, and everything you've done, eventually, and you just figure it out over time. It's a part of this purification process. Everything. It'll come up in memory. Everything eventually comes up in memory. But generally, you can say all the times that I've done that, ask the Lord to forgive you for it. That's what you do. That's the practice anyway. Put your hand on your heart and ask the Lord to forgive you, or just do it in your head. But you have to recognize what the sin is, and then of course you don't do it again. And that can take a while for some things to get used to, because the temptations will come to you again and again. But this is the process. And of course, you ask for the Lord's help with those temptations as well, and ask His help with grace to help you with those temptations. But that's the basic practice, the two basic practices. That will occur on your walk. The thoughts will come to you. That will occur during the day. But they're the key things: resentments and shame. And so if shame's related to what you need to be forgiven for and embarrassment, and you have to recognize the sin, and resentments are related to the wrongs that have been done against you, which you need to let go by an action of asking the Lord to bless those people. And mean it. Mean it when you do it. Like I said, then you'll be released of those things. Okay. This is quite a simple one, but it's important for entering this. It's not so much contextualizing what you're doing, although it does to a degree. It's purifying you. Is by thanking Him, you recognize that He is the ground of all these things. He's only withdrawn for the sake of your freedom, which, getting rid of your sin, brings you closer to Him, so you actually can experience Him, and He'll intervene and miracles happen for you. Grace is granted to you. But giving thanks is an incredibly important thing, because it's a recognition, and you'll start to see this and know it with infused certainty because of the practices you're engaging with, because of concentration without effort. You'll know that He is not as something rationality is part of it, but that's the lowest part of it. As you'll know from watching my other videos, is what you experience is direct interaction, the true being of God. You end up walking with God, as the Bible describes, through the experience of mystic touch and other spiritual touch, you could call it. It's analogous to the sense of touch, but it just becomes an unquestionable fact. The great philosophers and theologians have this raw experience of the Lord, and you're not a true either one of those things unless you do have this. You're not a true theologian unless you do have this, because that's what the true one did. Really, you're like it's metaphysical jugglery of propositional ideas, moving them around. I mean that with respect, because theology is difficult, like metaphysics. But again, the true theologian has this experience with God, and it puts the time in to experience it, or at least they did. Again, I don't want to talk about theologians anyway. We're not criticizing anyone. Just saying that rationality isn't the ground of truth. It's a helping hand. Systematization is a helping hand toward it, and is very, very important. And they're the people you listen to about their religion. But again, the ground of all that stuff is mysticism. Yeah, so giving thanks. Anytime you eat or drink anything, mark the cross and thank Him for it. And mean it. If you're in public when that happens, you might get embarrassed to begin with, but that's a great prodding to do it anyway. And you'll care less and less about it, but it's like a Luciferic temptation to, or a satanic temptation not to, right? Well, it's embarrassing to be Christian. Oh. Eventually, you just don't give it doesn't become a pride thing at all. It's simply you're more interested, though of course you're with Him to help save and help participate in helping heaven come to earth. You're not abandoning the people you're around, but you're more interested in the best. Like I said, the best part of your day becomes interacting with Him as your true father, and your true mother being Mary. And so you give thanks, and it brings you into the context, the proper context, like the icons help with, because He is the person that is responsible for it. And more, It's like the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. You want all the stuff, and he will miraculously bring these things about as you go into this process, depending on your moral development. But you want things, you're thanking him, and it's bringing more and more into the things that you interact with, or the things that are granted to you are of his context, including the food and the good things that happen. And he is ultimately responsible for all that, especially as you purify, because that's the sacred magic that's going on. Is that, and one of the senses is the magic sense, or the miraculous sense, which is the synthesis of the other two, which is mystic, the spiritual touch and spiritual hearing, as they say, is the fruit that comes about in your life, is the grace that's granted to you that is unquestionable fact, and you'll experience this. It's obvious, eventually becomes obvious that the grace isn't you, and the things that are happening aren't chance, and the things that you're doing bear fruit, and you know a good tree or a bad tree based on the fruits that it bears. A bad tree doesn't bear good fruits, ultimately. That's one of Christ's parables, or metaphors. That's a good point. I'm saying that's a good point for my own point. That's a good point. God. Well, there's some truth to that, because I wouldn't say I wrote all of this in many ways. A lot of it is inspired. So, but you're looking for the ground of truth, which is more than just a rationality or a reasoning. You're looking for material truth, not a inference or a reasoned one, which is always indirect, a deduction. No. What we're talking about is material truth, which is like the essence of things. You're doing this because you want to go to the essence and find the essence of things. You want authority. You don't want to be really sure that you're talking about philosophy and you've worked out exactly what Heidegger and Nietzsche and these people mean. And so you're making sure you fit in with that system, which is an idol, a system of ideas. Then you can feel like you've got certainty when you understand that philosopher and it fits exactly in with all the other academics talking about that. No. That's not authority at all. It's empty at its ground, because the great philosophers, like I said, the great theologians and Christians, get their interaction with metaphysics from actual ontology, from actual contact through this practice. Contact with the ground of the subject and the object happens through this. That's what Rudolf Steiner's talking about. That's what Valentin Tomberg's talking about. Saints and mystics have special faculties because of this. They have direct truth. He is truth as an accessible being, and sends it to you, and sends it to you as certainty, and you'll discover this. It's the true philosophy. It's the true theology as a mystical fact, because those things on their own, when they're cut off, are the bark. It's the roots of the whole thing. And giving thanks brings you, giving thanks, he is that truth. He's a person. So interacting with a person, you have to thank him for all of it. To come into that, for him to bring you into that context, it can't be a mechanical thing, or you won't get it, or you'll get lies. So that's why you give thanks. And because you're thankful, because he loves you. He gives you these things because he loves you, because he is love. And one of the saints said this, is that you over time, you want to say this, and it's true, is that, I love you, Lord, merely because you love me. Not to get things and achieve things. It's not an exchange. It's a relationship. Remember that one too. It's not an exchange. You're not even doing these things. It's not a little exchange to get something later. It's a real relationship. If you don't want the relationship with him, it ain't going to work. You gotta, and you go, oh, how do I mean that? Well, you pray as well too. You go, pray for faith, because faith isn't, again, it's something. It's an energy sent to you. It's a granted as well. It's not a accepted doctrine. It's a contact at the ground of your being. It's an energy, uncreated energy. You could think about it like that. And you can pray for those things. Because some people might go, like I said, oh, how do I believe this? You can mean it. It's an action you can do. Mean it. And you can do that. Because the will, you can choose God freely with the will by doing that. Mean it and do it. And then it's granted to you. It doesn't have to be grace first. It can be wish first. Wish first by doing it as an action. Say it to yourself. Mean it. You can, and you can do it. You have to do it first. And partly what this helps is take you out of the serpentine context where I do everything. There's so many things that have happened to you that you didn't do that you think you did. An idea was sent, a grace was sent, and you'll discover this as you go through this process. You'll discover, oh, that was him speaking when this strange phrase came to me. I remember early on, before I became a full-on devout Christian, when I went and I was going through a dark period, and I just returned to sit down and dwell and do a meditation. And the voice said to me, "Welcome home." And I just thought, what? Well, I didn't think what at the time. I immediately came with tears, but I still didn't know what that was. Of course, later you recognize who it was. Because why would I say welcome home? It's not home. To a modern, that's not home, but it is. You're on the way home to him. That's why welcome home. But you'll notice things that you wouldn't possibly ever say for no reason, because to you it means nothing. It's a mystery, right? But it was him. And you'll recognize that later for many other things that help you move towards what we're talking about today, that it was him. Yeah. And that's the thing that happens too. The gift of tears is a very important thing. The emotive comes with great truths. When great truths are revealed in the illumination stage of initiation, which are based on intermediate practices and advanced practices that occur later and take 4 months, 5 months in, maybe a year. Again, it's not, and these times aren't certain. It's based on your moral development, but they're in the book Meditations on the Tarot. But they're intermediate, advanced practices that are related to that. I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, giving thanks. It takes you out of the serpent's context where you believe your calculation was responsible, even though a lot of the time, like I said, you're being helped by your guardian angel. You just don't know those beings yet. And I remember Peugeot once said, "You don't want to talk to angels." That's wrong. Maybe random angels or nature spirits or whatever. You want to talk to your guardian angel because he is your conscience, which develops through this process. It's the most important thing to make contact with, have a deep relationship with, to be doing this. So you certainly want to have contact with your angel. But you have to purify yourself, of course. It's incredibly important. That's what part this is about. So, moving on. So, yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier. This self-gratifying. And what do I mean by self-gratifying? The sexual organ self-gratifying. This is a very first sin you can work on. And it's a great practice. Young men are involved with this because modernity has made it sort of not taught them the wrong way. And pornography and all that stuff. Again, like I said earlier, you might, in modernity, you think, oh, why? It doesn't matter. No one knows, blah, blah, blah. No. It's not about a dogma. It's about something that damages you and your relationship to him. That's what it's about. It stops you having contact. So if you want to develop spiritually, you will have to go through this. It's also excellent practice as a first sin because it comes up. The sexuality comes up a lot. So what to do with this very first sin that you might start working on. Again, start very slowly, begin with a concentration, but this is the very first sin you'll start working with. So here's how you do it, right? The moment any attention is brought to that area or any sensation occurs, you just a neutral no and bring your attention to your belly and then do the Lord's Prayer or the Jesus Prayer in time with the breath. If it gets drawn back there, you just gently do it again and gently do it again through the whole day. And anytime that happens, and eventually it just stops. But it'll be at night where if you're around the computer, you should put your computer in the common area. Don't keep your computer in your room, or don't use your computer in your room. So removing yourself from the temptation helps a lot at night. So, but it's a great practice because, eye lust, women flirting with you or sitting right in front of you, that's when it awakens again for me or whatnot. If someone flirts with you or whatnot. But yeah, it's not something because it's a bother after that. It's the first one you get rid of. But that's how you do it. It's just the moment it happens. Don't be too eager to do it. But yeah, then as soon as it happens and you basically habituate, that no becomes habituated. And it's just neutral. And it's good to get rid of that. And you also have to ask the Lord's forgiveness for that because it's sodomy, the self-gratifying stuff. I hope I use terms that aren't gross there because the subject isn't talked about because sexuality is never involved in any initiation. Nothing. It has in Christian mysticism, it's an animal thing. Of course, when you're married, it's part of the mystical union, you and your wife. It's important. All that stuff. That's good. Healthy sexuality in marriage is good. And a natural thing that attracts you to women. But modernity has completely disgustingly perverted this. So it is, and in initiation, any sensation down there is not something that, and it's related to any divine thing at all. So if you are experiencing that, it's a temporal phenomena. So you just move your attention to your belly. That's what you do whenever that occurs. And it's something that becomes habituated, and then you move on to the next sin. I think I've gone through all the things there. Take your time. That might be the first thing you can get rid of after you've habituated the practice or whatnot. But it is an important one because I only mention it really because modernity has made that sort of permissible. It'll halt your spiritual development. You have to ask for forgiveness and also get rid of all these sins and stop doing them. But again, you won't be tempted to go back because you're doing the concentration practices, because you've asked for forgiveness, and all these different things contribute to moving on. It's a great practice into this knowing of temptations that become more and more complex as you go through purification and illumination, of course, and then the final union. You're going up the ladder, and so the temptations become of course, you're dealing with Lucifer and Satan, ultimately, and they tempt in subtle ways, like covetousness is one. Say you go on a trip, you might look at someone's property and go, oh, I wish I had that, or F them, or something like that. That's covetousness. So it's an important, and you can get in that it's a very subtle one. Social media is full of these. It's a minefield of these temptations because of envy. So this is a great first one, and then you move on to the more spiritual ones, biological ones to spiritual ones. And I think I've talked about everything related to that there. They become more complex. See the church fathers, of course, and the saints, Valentin Tomberg's book. And you're practicing this every morning anyway when a thought comes to you when you're doing your concentration without effort, which is also prayer. And the next slide, so fasting. Of course, this is staple of the religion. This is just one thing that I have found helpful as a later practice. You don't want to do all this stuff at once. You want to take your time very slow. But you might want to fast 1 day a week. And when you do that, get fasting salts from the pharmacy, electrolytes. And you might have gum or soda drinks, also like Vegemite or something if you just want the salty taste. But yeah, not eating. And you'll discover that a lot of eating is quite demonic. And that's the obesity crisis that's been caused in our societies is based on advertising, which is also a demon, a satanic demon, or you could call it an aromatic demon, a technical demon. Causes a lot of this stuff. It's a spiritual disease. But we're not talking about, you're never doing any of these practices to try lose weight, to try do any of these things. It's always about God and your moral development. That's what it's about. If you do it the other way around, you're making him your technique. You have to be very careful to keep reminding yourself is that he's not a technique to help with some modern goal you have. The modern stuff you do is merely a means to him who is your end. That's the recontextualizing of everything that must occur in life to escape the hell that is modernity. To have the divine presence to you in everyday life. To escape that horrible everydayness. And it's truly magical. It is truly magical for these things to awaken to you. Truly. And it doesn't take that long for it to be made possible. If you could just put the time in. Because that thing in you that says, I don't have time, are the demons of modernity, are the goals that you have, the lusts for the objects you want, the money, all that stuff is keeping you away from him. He'll also provide for you. I've got a video about this too, which is about I don't have time, this excuse we make for ourselves that stops us developing. The life of mysticism is more important now than ever with AI coming. It's, as Seraphim Rose said, is that the end is closer than you know. The apocalypse is on its way. You can either be homo provoked, where you'll just be, you'll have the horns, or you'll be a sheep. In the apocalypse, it says that you'll be a prodding of a principality, and you can see that on Twitter. How many people are the low entities made into the low entities of some internet figure, some internet daddy that is the principality's chief, when they're not Christian, especially. And that daddy, that internet daddy, sucks off those people, and their ego inflates, which is again a real dangerous temptation to attribute to yourself. And that's what you've done your whole life. You've attributed to yourself. I'm the master. No. The empirical self is low and corrupt. And that's what's damaged you. That's what's caused trouble. Doesn't mean, and even if you achieve all the things you achieve, I've won awards and all that, done things where you're the best for that year, and done difficult things and done the best at them. It's empty at its ground. So these people that build themselves up, it's a disease, especially an internet disease. And the Lord has been helping them, and they haven't even recognized it. But you do recognize it when you go through these things and you accept him. He is the Lord. And he replaces these things, and he should replace things like ADHD medication, for instance. You've got to get off that. Concentration comes from this process of forgiveness, the 3 oaths, and going through these practices more than any breathing exercise or anything like that. Because if you do the breathing exercises, you take yourself away from grace if you're trying to control breath, and you actually damage your automatic breath. So don't do breathing exercises. And what contributes more to concentration without effort is this process, because you're doing it all at once, is a calm soul, is a good conscience, meaning you have contact with your guardian angel, who is conscience. Your older brother is outside. He's your transcendent self. You've lost complete contact from him. He wants nothing more than to help you. But you have to go through this process to establish contact, to stop thinking that you're the ground of everything you've achieved. Let go of that low grasping at power, which really at its ground is just an emptiness. This lust for more is because you are empty at your ground. It's because you're dying. So you're trying to grasp it more. Like you have a being towards death at the ground of your existential being, because you haven't established contact with the true Lord, who actually you're nested in, but you're at a distance from him because of Satan and Lucifer, because of original sin and all these things. You'll discover this is the ground of reality. You'll discover this. Philosophical types, you'll discover this. This is how the great philosophers found the ground, through practices like this. This is how. It became possible just to do on your own without some external initiation after Christ came. He makes this possible. He heals you on the outside. And I can attest to it. So, what are we talking about? Off on a rant. Fasting. Yeah. So one day a week is a good to, because it's, I found anyway, eating is one of those things where I mean completely not going to only eating certain things. I mean just once a week. And maybe not every week. I don't always do it every week, but at least you recognize, because eating is something you do every day. So to recognize that the Lord can help you with it, also pray to him for help to do it, because it can be difficult. But you recognize that you can do anything with his help as well. And it's good to recognize that something you have to do every day doesn't have to be done. And it shows you which parts of desire are demonic and which are natural biological processes, and which are boredom when you're not actually hungry. So, but it's about spiritual development. That's why you do it, like I said. I think I've talked about everything there. All right. And we sort of talked about this already before too, is that, like I mentioned with ADHD medication and things like that, caffeine and nicotine are okay because they're not putting something at the ground which is connected to desire, dopamine, whatever. But those concentration medications they've got to go. The Lord provides it. But the point is, you've got to get used to asking him for these things, because you gain access to, through prayer, virginal Zoe. Now, in the Bible, Zoe is a word for, there's two words used for energy, Zoe and bios. You've got bios, which is a derivative heredity energy, which is what people are trying to increase when they take vitamin D. And vitamin D is fine. But, vitalists try to increase this. There's an outside of temporality version that's sent from the eternal, uncreated energies, virginal Zoe, which is granted to you, and the Lord will grant to you if you ask for it. Not exactly when you want it. You have to keep remembering he's not a mechanism. Even later on, is that he's your loving Father, right? So, and you have to remind yourself. You will always have to remind yourself, because you want. Am I treating him like a mechanism here? You got to remind yourself. But you ask him for these things. Lord, grant me grace, like I do with every stream. Grant me grace to help those. Help me help them do the practices. Help me speak. Help me not speak mistruth. Help me speak truth. Grant me grace to speak not speak mistruth, and to speak your word. Speak through me. Grant me grace for that. I pray thee, Lord, beloved Lord. So everything that can be for the energies for the day doesn't always happen exactly as you want it, but as you develop, it becomes something that is available. He replaces all that. That's why Alcohol Anonymous works. You don't need these concentration drugs. You've got to get off it, because it's placing a polemical energy, which is the lowest form of energy, which is this war. It's the energy of war. It's the derivative of a mimetic war, which is part of what has been and makes you derivative and controlled, or bios. But usually what happens in modernity, as you see on Twitter with the endless polemic wars, is you're not driven by Christ from your providential future, which is what he wants you to be. You're driven by what has been in the past and polemical energy. What those drugs do is place a electrical anxiety-inducing thing near your ground. They lift up the will to power. That's why all the Nazis. I shouldn't have said that. That's why all the mustache men people were on. I probably shouldn't even mention the name of these drugs, because that might make the stream less recognized. They were on like ADHD meds that kept them awake, that stimulated them. It's really tied up with the will to power, that drug. And it places things between you and the Lord, who grants you these energies once you establish a relationship with him. Zoe, virginal Zoe, which comes from outside temporality, the eternal. So just a good, important point, because we're talking about concentration. I mean, you might, if you're on them, you could, eventually you can taper off them through this practice. It's just a self-belief you have that you have, to actually take them or whatnot. But yeah, you need to get off those things. But as far as I've experienced, the Lord doesn't seem to mind if you have a coffee in the morning before you practice. I wouldn't go over more than half a coffee. Some people, if you don't have much effect from caffeine, if it's making you anxious or anything like that, just don't. But it's okay to have your morning coffee before you start. Don't have more than one though. Even that, like half a one, as long as you're awake. Yeah. So just wanted to talk about that. He's the true vine. That's what all those I am things are. He enters the blood eventually. That's the mystery of the blood, and you can sense that in a very real way. He is all those I ams that we talked about last week. I am the true vine. I am the true vine is to do with this particular thing. Life. He provides the life forces. You ask him. And that's the context you're slowly entering. Getting away from. Because what are ADHD drugs? They're satanic. They're aromatic. They're technical. They're turning you into a machine. So you can do what modernity wants you to do. But your true concentration comes from the Lord through this process, through these practices. So, as you progress, there's some intermediate things that we can talk about. One of them is Christian breathing, which again, the yogis, it's all sacrilege. Breathing exercises are sacrilege because they stop you from having access to grace. What you'll notice eventually in this process, and pay careful attention to in your concentration without effort, is if your breath slows down or speeds up, you allow that. Because where do you think it's coming from? Again, you're praying when all this is happening. It's all in prayer, but grace comes down to move your breath and speeds it up, slows it down. If you're doing some breathing exercise from yogiism or whatever, you're interrupting that process, and actually it's dangerous. When you might find that you get woken up in asphyxiation because you have done these breathing exercises. Stop doing that if you do that stuff. It's stopping you having contact with Christ, who you collaborate with. It's stopping the divine collaboration with the Lord, who is your Lord. It's not neat, like it's will to powery to make these things techniques. That's why I'm constantly saying they're not techniques, because it's collaboration. When you make them a technique, was the mistake that the East made. That's why they have those things on the battens that they roll, because they've turned their spirituality into a technique that they roll a thing and that's the prayer. No, prayer's to a person. You don't roll a thing on a wall. You don't, like the Tibetans do, you don't roll a thing on a wall. So we must understand these things are techniques. God is not a technique. He won't listen. Well, he'll let you keep developing your morality if you try treating him like a technique. It's a person. You've got to get, and that's what all this is about, learning that. And so the grace of the breath is, you'll experience that in a very real way, the mystery of the breath. I think I don't want to go into any more of it than that. You should, oh, well, actually, let's go into it. Just one thing about it is that vertical breathing and horizontal breathing used to be united in ancient times. The Lord's will is felt mystically as a breathing in and a breathing out. That's at the very ground of our being, is the breathing out in and breathing out of love, and it can be experienced. That vertical breath is what you begin to be able to harmonize with through these practices. In ancient times, for the apostles, their breath was united with his breath. A breathing in and a breathing out physically wasn't separated because the mercenaries hadn't cut up Christ's clothes yet. And so that's what you are going back to, the ground of reality, which experiences that. But you're out of contact with that in the moment because of various things that I've already mentioned. So, okay. That's the breath. The other thing is, as you would, don't you have to worry about this too much as you start. Just be patient and wait, and do your daily practice, and don't over try, and all the things that we've talked about already. But noticing the zone of silence that he talks about, Valentin Tomberg, in his book Meditations on the Tarot, which you should get, and is available as an audiobook if you join the fellowship. Please join. We want more people. It's a great blessing, incredible blessing to see people advancing in this and establishing contact with our beloved Lord. It was the best thing, one of the best things of my life to see. It's helping people. And to have that fellowship is great. Of people doing the same thing. like-minded people. What was I saying? The zone of silence. So a way of sort of getting a sense of where that is, if you're just starting to do these things, is you could do it after your concentration practice or just before. Oh, no. If you're trying to find it and you do it after, just attend to your eyes, the feeling of your eyes, and also the back of your head. Bring your attention to that, and then just try to find the in between of that. There are no sensory organs there, but that can help. Eventually, you'll discover there's this other thing there, just behind the eyes or behind the brow. Again, after you've developed this progress, and that's essentially where the zone of silence is. But your whole body becomes a second sense for spiritual touch. It can be compared to, it's analogous to the body's normal senses. And why is that? Because they represent all 5 different currents of the will: the left and right hand, the left and right leg, the heart, and the head. 5 currents of the will. Those currents are lifted up through this practice, moving towards the Lord. And of course, they become senses, which is what I'm talking about. You can sense movement, and which is called spiritual touch. So that's how you discover the zone of silence. Or usually a good time to be on the lookout just for any phenomenology or anything that's different from normal when you're attending these things. And you're becoming more and more and more and more and more conscious of everything by doing this stuff. So you will notice things. The end of the practice is a good time because you've been in deep contemplation and prayer to notice things like that. Also, walking home from church, usually if you pray for something, for insight, whatever it might be, if you're listening to an audiobook, you might notice different phenomenology and coinciding with miracles of birds that will help communicate things to you that you're trying to understand as well. The walk home from a prayer at church is a really good time to notice the miraculous as well. And so, yeah, that's what, when he talks about the zone of silence, that's what he's talking about. Because a silent vigil, like the monastics, is being established in you as your ground moves towards him. And that's what eventually happens. I don't want to talk about the phenomena and phenomenology today too much of the practice, but he cuts you off from temporal lust and desires and the woes of temporality. He pulls you out of. You're here to save, though. You're not checking out from the world, but you're to be with him. And so you'll notice deep calm and silence is granted eventually. Prayer evolves. Prayer, again, once you've established this silent vigil at the ground of you, this praying unceasingly, it's always there. But eventually, so an hour into your prayers, he'll come and silence will come. Deep, 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 deep silence and deep relaxation, more deep than you could ever know. I won't go too much into the phenomenology of that today, but it is, there's nothing greater that you can experience than this stuff. But when you're doing this stuff, the Lord never comes with a bustle or electrical energy or anything like that. It's always, very rarely, what's granted to you is given with your moral development in mind. And it's in calm relaxation of concentration without effort that you experience him and his angels. So just a note we'll talk about that in the phenomenology stream next week. So what else do we have here? These are just sort of pointers because you won't understand what these things are until you start developing them. But the emotive zone is something you should keep your eye on to know who travels their way with you after your practices. This won't become all that relevant. I mean, no, it is relevant because you have to. It's sort of near the zone of silence, really, is where emotion comes from. But you should bring your attention there throughout the day, just to see what's there, where mood is, because that becomes a mode of communication. So, and especially with icons as well, that develops. So, it's something important to keep in mind in the intermediary sense. Also, finding a deeper part of stomach too. If you might only be able to feel the skin on the surface or something. What you could do before the practice is just feel the surface of the stomach and the back. You can feel where your back is, and then try to find the place between them. and then you'll be able to find somewhere deeper in the diaphragm where breath comes from if you can't feel where it is. So the surface, the front, and then the back, and then try find the middle. Bringing your attention, that can help with that. So that's another thing, intermediate as an intermediate practice. All the things you experience, don't be worried about the visual. We're not going to talk about the phenomenology today, but spiritual touch is primary anyway. That's primary. Uncreated energies, that's primary. What's seen is secondary. But, I'm going to say that. After you finish your morning practice, your morning way, your morning prayer, meditation prayer, Christian meditation, after you finish that, summarize everything in your head. What happened is a great thing. You have your memory is something that is being awakened to. As Plato even says, that you're remembering these things. You're awakening and you're remembering. And you're going to sleep at the same time, but you're awake. So it's a raising with collaboration and always with washing of the feet outside. It all happens in the 3 oaths that we've talked about before. So, yeah. Summarize it. What are the events that happened? Because it'll help you remember them, because important things happen to you. Things are said. Emotiveness. It makes you more aware in general. So you summarize all the things that happened, that you felt, that you heard, that you saw during the practice. Anything that happens in experience, summarize it at the end. That's it, just in your head. You also might want to keep a miracle diary, a miracle and dream. For me, dreams were not that important, but symbolism can be important in them. Well, they are important in the sense that you'll be awake in some of them, which is related to, like I mentioned last week, the apostles on the boat. You will experience that later, but we'll talk about that in the phenomenology stream next week. And also in the second part of this stream, we can talk about it in the Discord. So in the fellowship only Discord part of the stream, which you can join at scottmanu.com/membership and see. So, yeah, that's everything, I think. Sacred reading, that is more related to phenomenology again. But if you want to, there's other things, more practices talked about by Valentin Tomberg. Again, this isn't all him anyway. This is Christian mysticism and things that I've been taught by the Lord that I've passed on. But yeah, grab that book, Valentin Tomberg's book. Like I've talked about before, there's an audio book in the Discord for that. And these different things you'll also experience. You'll be able to, you can asking questions of the Lord. It's a practice of communication and conscience, the ability, the faculty of practical intuition, moral intuition, and the intuition of truth, which is the feeling for the good, the beautiful, and the true, are things that become accessible. And that's you. What is conscience? It's your guardian angel. It's a being, your older brother, basically, that you end up communicating with. These are things that are intermediate. And I'll talk about them at a different time in more detail, but they're not relevant for you because it takes time. So, yeah, that's about everything. You also might notice when you're reading visual things or emotiveness or mystic touch, if that develops for you yet. The mystic sense, again, we'll talk about that phenomenology next week. But when you're reading, things will be highlighted. You'll see visually. These are intuitions that are driving you towards something, to notice something, especially when it's sacred reading, when you're reading the church fathers or the saints or texts related to this process, like Valentin's book or his 2 books, Lazarus Come Forth and Meditations on the Tarot. You're guided by your angel. Again, there's nothing more meaningful, but in sight, visually, active imagination, you could call it, which is the faculty we were talking about last week when Christ heals the blind man. Where the divine helps show him all the good in reality because it's transparently over it. That makes sense. And symbolically, things can be shown to you in that active imagination. These are very subtle things that you notice. We'll talk about that next week, the phenomenology. But here is a good point. This is less about the mystic practices and more about, I don't know how many people watching this struggle with even the basic changes in their life. This really, you should go to church and have a priest if you're really, 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 really struggling. But if you want, you can, there's just some basic thoughts that help people that just are starting very small. You habituate one thing a week. So Jocko Willing and these military guys, don't listen to them. Get up at 4:30 in the morning. These people didn't do anything themselves. They participated in a military technology, which is all the procedures the military have of training that force them to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Once they were programmed by the technique of that, then they did it. So the circumstances of stuff forced them to do that. That's not self-starting. That's not. That's why you don't listen to them, because they were forced to do it. Doesn't matter if they were trying. It's at the very ground they did basic training. Once you sign up, again, it's a technique. It's a technology, a military technology that is the state. Once you sign up to the military, you can't leave. Stuff like that, right? Yes, they did things, but they don't know how to do it when you're completely ruined. They know they're taught things because the state has a incentive scheme. You can even see it about, there's some guy, that Navy SEAL, that destroyed his life on drugs and went and joined the Foreign Legion to save himself. What is that? It's letting a technology sort of force you into the situation, not finding the Lord at the ground of your being. It is jumping off a cliff that there's no other way from. You go to French Foreign Legion, you've got no money, you make it irreversible. You're forced into the situation, though. That's not doing something from a horrible situation like some drug addict, being a drug addict, and actually finding your way out of it on your own. That's sort of putting a boulder on your foot and jumping off a cliff. It's using circumstances to do it. It may work, but it's not something that helps people generally. These aren't psychologists. These aren't priests. Don't look to military people for advice for anything. I don't even like the military. Don't ever let your children sign up to the military. Don't be a pawn of the state. That's what they are. They're taught procedures of the state. They don't know anything about spirituality or anything like that. Don't listen to them. Sorry, military people, but enough of this. We need to learn. Yes, it takes courage, but you signed up. You're forced to do it once you do it. You know what I mean? Once you're in it. So, priests, the religion, is how you do learn from people, not military types. But anyway, I don't know why I'm going into that to such detail. Let's forget about that and move on. So what you do, if you're in a terrible situation where you're just provoked by everything, one thing you do, you start off with the tiniest thing. Just on a Saturday, you sit down and write what you might want to do during the week. That's it. And that's all you have to do for that week. Then the next week, you start habituating that 1 day a week thing. Then the next thing you do is, okay, you create a sheet. And on that Sunday, you pick one practice you want to habituate daily. And you break your whole life down into this either daily or weekly practices to achieve. Again, it's all centered around God. All these things are chosen with Him at their ground. That's how you truly do it. But I'm just talking about getting out of a basic, just to start doing this concentration in your prayers. This is just a little thing that helps. So you write down the thing and you put 7 small circles next to that. One thing you want to do daily. And in the morning, you paste that sheet up on the wall in a place where you do something, where you already do something in the morning. Maybe you could write it on the mirror in magic marker if you're in the shower. So you would see it every morning, perhaps. But yeah, put it on a wall on your desk if you go there every morning. And you wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do, and that's why you put it somewhere that you see so you remember, you have that little thing there. And did you do that yesterday? You put a little marker, and you habituate that over a week. And that's why you do one thing to begin with, because if you never do habituate more than 3 things, Usually take 2 weeks to start slow. Take 2 weeks to habituate one thing. Say it's the concentration practice. You write on your sheet, and you check that, and you check that, and you habituate that. You check it off each morning. Did I do that yesterday? Yes. Then you might want to then also add a review for the end of the day, 4 p.m. or something, or 6 p.m. You might want to do it right before you leave your work, because you might be a bit tired if you work all day like I do. I work pretty long hours doing this stuff, and you're tired, right? So you do it right before you leave where you're working or where you're doing your work. And you do that review where what are the things that you said you'd do that you omitted? What are the sins that you did? What are the things you did that you committed to? That's basically it. And after you finish that, you write down all the things what could you do to do that better? Or what are the things you need to do again tomorrow? And you just label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'll just give you an idea. It'll be in the back of your mind to do it the next day. You won't always do it, but it's those omitted things. Usually you'll write them down in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 next to where you've written those things down. And if there's a sin, you might just think quickly, what can I do to not do that? Just and wait for ideas. Yeah. And so you just do that at the end of the day. Put a little alarm somewhere for it. Do it before you leave work. And you habituate that over 2 weeks. Again, do things one at a time. But again, the most important thing is prayer, morning prayer, and a prayer rule. So you establish doing these things every day. Every day. That's the thing, that you anchor everything around God. But that little practice of review can help a lot and towards your direction during the day. And like I said, treat yourself like a sheep. You're a lost sheep. Pray for help. You're also a lost sheep that you're trying to help. You've got sins that you need to get rid of. When in doubt, do a bit less. So Westerners are quite willful to self-improve very quickly. When in doubt, do one thing, not 3 things. Because I've often found that I would try to do 3 or 4 things, new habits or whatever it is. Again, this isn't so much related to the religious practices we're talking about. It's just a thing around them that you might want to do around them. And even as I say here, it's the religious practice is the very most important thing, going to church. So, yeah. Let's go and have a look at what you guys have said. But part 2 of the stream continues in the fellowship, in the Discord, scottmanion.com/membership, which really is a fellowship, joining the fellowship. I'm going to change that link because I don't like membership. Join the fellowship there. And join the fellowship, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that's helpful. It should be, because it's all I can say is that it's the most incredible experience of your life, moving closer to God. And this is incredibly important stuff, especially earlier in the stream. Let's have a look to see if you guys have had any questions before we jump over. Let's look at here. Where's the stream? There we are. Oh, super chats. Okay, Frankie D. I joined the Discord, members Discord. I've missed most of the stream. I recently started taking... the Lord will slowly... He's talking about the ADHD medication. The Lord will slowly guide you into Just do the practices with what you're doing for now. I think that the Lord will direct you what to do, and your guardian angel will direct you what to do. Frankie D. Thanks for joining the members Discord. I'll see you over there. No, it's okay. No, you will. Don't have to worry that you'll never see anything and nothing's going to happen. Just let the Lord will guide you eventually. Just keep doing what you're doing. But I can tell you, you eventually won't need them. But no, it won't stop you from seeing anything. Don't worry. I understand it's prescribed. Don't worry. Just do your practice. Eventually, the Lord will guide you. And I tell you, you won't need it. But you don't worry. It won't stop you. But yeah. So don't worry. Just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, don't worry. But just the important thing is to start the practices because you're dealing with the Lord, and the Lord knows the truth of what you're capable of and what's good for you, and you experience that in the grace, and that's why it's so meaningful too. Is that the yogis doing things with the breath? They're controlling it. That's so dangerous. Like Wim Hof doing breath practices, but when you know you're being guided by grace and your breath's being guided by grace, and anything's being guided by grace, you're in His hands. There's nothing to worry about. Okay, wow, there's quite a lot of messages here. Let me just go to live chat. Thanks for the super chat too, Frankie D. Don't worry. Okay. Seamus, hello. There's a lot of chats here. I find it that since finding my spiritual father's teachings and truly pray to Jesus' prayer, I feel almost as if I'm asleep. What? Yes. Technoir graphics. I feel almost, since finding my spiritual father, his teachings of how to truly pray the Jesus prayer, I feel almost as if I'm in a sleep state, waking state. Yes. A kind of soft height of love. It'll only get deeper and deeper. And someone was talking in the Discord already about that with his young child doing the Jesus prayer and also attending the breath. And already grace entering him. Wow, there's a lot of messages here. I don't want to be able to answer them all. God bless you too. People saying blessing each other. That's so important and we do that in the Discord too. Pray for each other. Prayers are needed. I saw recently the Catholic exorcist, talking about priests having a real hard time. It's so true. It's a shame they don't get married in Catholicism. I think it's an important part in Orthodoxy that they do, but you got to pray for your priest, man. As Seraphim Rose said, it's later than you think, moving towards the apocalypse. Pray for your priests. Every day I'm grateful to God you're doing this, Scott. I want you to know, in case you aren't aware, that there are many people like me. God bless you. I pray every day for the Lord to help you guys with the practices. Pray for each other too. If you're willing to, pray for everyone else that's watching these videos to help them understand how to do the practices and to also just habituate them. Oh, I feel totally blocked off from experiencing these things. I don't really see any change. Well, you don't think about the results, Frankie. Just do it. Don't worry about the results. Even with the medications, you'll still things will come about. But you got to listen to your guardian angel of your intuitions. Whoa. I want proof I can't get out of the cognitive. Oh, yeah. You just have to keep saying it. You have to pray for it too. Pray for faith. I'm worried I'll never see anything. Okay, you have to let go of trying to bring something about. You have to do these practices. You got to let go. You have to go through what I'm saying today. Once you start doing them, stop. You just got to keep reminding yourself. You have to just keep reminding yourself. Stop lusting after it and habituate the practices. It's pointless to get worried about it. And as even Rudolf Steiner said, you just have to be patient. Again, that's just a proposition, me saying it. You are granted that by doing the practice. So if you just do the practice and stop thinking about it, you're granted these things. So, yeah, that's what you need to do, Frankie. I think that's everything, everyone. I'm going to jump over to the second part of the stream in the Discord. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you today. I think it will. God bless everyone. And I'll see you guys over in the Discord. And I'll see you guys next week.